It gives me great pleasure this evening to introduce Matt to you. He's our next speaker. Matt is happily married. He has two girls, aged 8 and 10. He's recently become involved with, professional speaking, and is a new licensee with Steve Siebold and the Mental Toughness Program. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Matt Harmon. Thank you.
When I was a kid, I was pretty active. I played a lot of sports. And one of the sports that I played was tennis, and I was pretty good. Not as good as Mr. Siebold, but I was pretty good. And I practiced a lot. I mean, I really worked hard at it. I probably practiced, I would say, like, probably at least 10 minutes a week. I mean, I was really committed. And but I enjoyed playing. Obviously, I wasn't that committed, but I enjoyed playing. And so one summer, I was playing at the tennis club that my parents belonged to, and my mom had to find something for me to do during the day, and she was working nearby, and I'm playing tennis, and the ball comes towards me at one point, and it's a ball that it's going to land like right at my feet. And so I had two choices. I can either come forward and volley it, or I can step back and let it bounce. So I thought, well, I'll step back and let it bounce and hit the ground stroke. That turned out to be the wrong decision. As I went back and planted my right leg, I fell to the ground screaming. And I looked down, even though I already knew what had happened. And instead of being here, my right kneecap was over here. And from what I understand from doctors, that's bad. So I'm laying on the ground screaming. I'm looking over for the instructor, the one adult that's there, for like help, and it took him a minute to get up and come over, because I later found out that he thought I was screaming because I hit a bad shot. Now, I very well may have hit a bad shot. To this day, I have no idea, because I wasn't screaming because I hit a bad shot. I was screaming in pain. So they call my mom, call the ambulance, and ambulance comes. They lift me up onto the stretcher, which hurt like crazy. Every time I tried to move, it just I just couldn't move. I was just in so much pain. And so they take me into the hospital. On the way to the hospital, ambulance has to go through a construction zone with an uneven pavement, so I'm bouncing around in the back of the ambulance. Ow! And the whole way there, and then they move me again from the ambulance stretcher onto the hospital bed. And then, of course, they've got to take x-rays, so they move me again onto the x-ray table, and then again, and then move me back off the x-ray table back onto the hospital bed. And finally, doctor comes in and x-ray. I didn't break anything. I just dislocated my kneecap. And he says, we're gonna. The whole time my leg was bent. He said, so we need to straighten your leg in order to get your kneecap back into place. So we're gonna have some nurses do that. And I said, that's okay. I'll do that myself. Just give me a minute. So I very slowly straightened my leg back out. And so the doctor comes in. He's like, okay, good. And so he grabs me standing on the side of the bed. My leg is like this. And so he grabs me, my knee's right here, grabs it like this, and with his thumbs, pushes my kneecap back into place. And it hurt, but it felt so much better. It just hurt for a second. Then I said, oh, thank you. And so I spent 4 weeks in a cast, and then, rehab after that. And so, that was, things were a lot better after that. But then 14 months after I did that to my right knee, did the same thing to my left knee. Thanks very much.
Matt, let me have you stand up for just a second. First of all, you didn't move your feet at all. No wiggling, nothing. Just a little bit with your hands. If you're going to touch fingers, you can't play with them.
Okay.
You just got to touch them, because this was in the beginning. Just watch your thumbs. So just go ahead and get in the presidential stance, and I'll get it on tape for you so you can see what it looks like. And you know what, Matt, you actually look great with your hands just down by your side.
Okay.
Not a lot of people look comfortable that way, but I think you do.
Okay.
So take a look at that. Now go ahead and just touch fingers. And perfect. You just loosen them up a little bit. Just take a little practice in the a little practice in the mirror. But that looks very professional. So take a look at that. Sometimes we went this way and then we did this, and you got a little crazy with the hands. But that's other than that, you didn't move an inch. You did a fantastic job with just standing still. So congratulations, that's not easy to do. So, okay, have a seat. Let's talk about what you did really well. First of all, Matt's really funny. I like your one-liners, and it's funny because the more one-liners you can have, you guys, the better. I remember Steve going to Bill Govan saying, when we was just first starting, and he said, I got it. And Bill goes, okay, give it to me, kid. And Steve's like, you have your points, then you put your stories together, then you add your humor, and then you add the one-liners in between. And Bill goes, almost. It's the completely opposite. You start with the one-liners, you start with the funny, the stories, and then you put the points. So the fact that you can do one-liners are great. Again, Matt was the perfect example of keeping everything first person, right? We're on the tennis court with them live. He brought that to us live. He's hitting the ball, first person. Then they put him in. It's not then they had to put me in. Then they put me in the ambulance. Then we're going over Rocky Road. Then they put me in the hospital. Then we had to transfer. So right away we're live. Even though it's a chronological process, we're live with Matt going through with it with them, right? I'm right there with them with the pain. Does that make sense? So it didn't happen in the past. He brought us with them. So that's what I want us to try to all challenge to do our stories. Take us live, right there with you. And so I thought you did that really well. I really like the story. I think we're going to have to make it a little bit more exciting for the timeline. But it's definitely what I would call rich premise. And so we'll work on that. The only other thing I have, Matt, you didn't move at all. Just a little bit of being comfortable looking at us. I thought you were looking down a little bit. And I think since you haven't really given any speeches, I don't think it's a habit. I think maybe if you're thinking of the words that are going to come next, you're kind of struggling with that you won't probably look down. But just be careful of that, because a lot of the times you were looking down. But I think once it's memorized, you know what you're going to say and you know where it's going. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but just be aware of it, because you have great eye contact with people when you meet them. I mean, I've noticed, when you and I have met and you've introduced yourself to everyone here. So again, I don't think it's a problem for you. I just think once you have it all scripted and you know what you're doing. But did I miss something? Because this guy did not move an inch. I mean, he planned to say, see how much better it looks? There's no distraction. All we're doing is listening to Matt's story.
He has artificial knees.
Now that we know that, Keith, was that distracting for you? Keith kept going, I couldn't get past his knees. Maybe don't wear shorts when you tell that story. But
I kept wanting to say, we feel your pain.
For anybody, right? For anybody. But see, Matt did beautifully is he brought us with him and we felt it. You know what I mean? So, like to Miguel's story, Miguel took us chronologically through, but we didn't feel anything. Do you see, so I want to feel when Miguel tells me his story. That's what I'm looking for.
For a lot of groans.
A lot of you should, and I don't know because you were looking down so much, but you should have seen the facial expressions of the people in the audience. I mean, I looked at one time, Don and I were like, oh God, and that's what you want. You want the audience feeling that story, okay? Because it's obviously very dramatic. I mean, that's something we want to feel, and so to do that, you almost have to bring us there live. Does that make sense? And he matched his facial expressions with what he was saying. I'm out playing tennis. He's joking around with this. I'm not as good as Steve. Brought a personal touch because we all know Steve. Very professional move right there. And then all of a sudden he falls down, and now he slowed down. And he was like, I'm in pain. And the funny thing, so he matched what he was saying with his facial expressions and his demeanor. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I think the problem for all of us who've been trained is that they tell us not to do that. We got to be perfect. Okay, now look at how vulnerable that's made Matt. Okay? It's a story where a guy who looks athletic got hurt. So that opens up Matt to be vulnerable. Those of us who've had professional training, don't be vulnerable. You've got to be the professional. You've got to sound good. You've got to sound perfect. Everything's got to come chronologically in order and correct. And what Matt did, and it's so funny because every person that comes in here that's had no training in speaking is usually the most authentic. Because we haven't broken down all of our bad habits. So, but great job, Matt. Terrific, actually.